On a gray October morning in 1987, a sealed package arrived at Johns Hopkins Medical Institute. Inside were dark blood samples, a fragment of tissue, and a handwritten note requesting immediate expert review. For Dr. Marcus Whitfield, a veteran geneticist, it seemed like just another case in a long career of strange puzzles. But this one was different. The samples belonged to a 16-year-old boy named Elias Carver, raised in the remote valleys of West Virginia. At first glance, Elias looked like the inevitable result of 8 generations of inbreeding, a tragic boy born from collapsing bloodlines. Yet what Whitfield discovered under the microscope defied science itself. Blood that behaved as if it were alive in ways no human biology textbook could explain. DNA that twisted, adapted, and rewrote itself before his very eyes. And Elias himself? Silent. Watchful, with a presence that unsettled even the most hardened men in the hospital. Was Elias Carver simply a medical anomaly, or the first glimpse of a transformation humanity was never meant to witness? Before we unravel this haunting mystery, do me a quick favor. Tap like if you love true science horror stories, and hit subscribe if you're new here. Share this with a friend who enjoys unsettling tales. You'll want someone to talk to after hearing this. The morning began like countless others at Johns Hopkins. Dr. Marcus Whitfield, a seasoned geneticist with decades of work behind him, sat in his office, sipping bitter coffee as the October air pressed cold against his windows. Among the usual stack of manila envelopes, one package stood out. The handwriting on its label was sharp and deliberate. It was sent by Dr. Samuel Hayes, a respected rural physician from West Virginia. Inside were 2 vials of unusually dark blood, a small preserved tissue sample, and a note scribbled with urgency. Hayes wrote, "Marcus, I've encountered something in 30 years of medicine I cannot explain." The note continued, detailing a 16-year-old boy named Elias Carver. Elias, Hayes explained, was the descendant of 8 generations of men marrying within their own bloodline. Yet the boy's biology did not resemble normal human genetics. Marcus turned the vials in his hands, immediately noticing the unusual thickness of the blood. It clung to the glass, shifting like something alive. He frowned, his scientific instincts urging him to begin analysis immediately. His laboratory was state-of-the-art, filled with humming machines and shelves of meticulously organized research notes. Marcus prided himself on methodical precision. Every anomaly had a story, and he had spent decades uncovering them. But as he prepared Elias's blood for the standard smear, his hands paused. Under the microscope, the cells were clustering unnaturally, forming shifting geometric patterns, as if guided by an unseen intelligence communicating within themselves. David Chen, his trusted research assistant, entered carrying preliminary test results. David's usually calm demeanor faltered. "Dr. Whitfield, these numbers don't make sense. Hemoglobin levels are almost double the norm, and the white cells are unrecognizable." Marcus studied the report. The white blood cells possessed traits from primitive organisms and others from highly advanced species. They resembled a hybrid mosaic of life that should not exist within any known human lineage. He instructed David to rerun the tests, this time dividing the samples into separate vials. Meanwhile, Marcus turned to the tissue fragment. Its structure resembled both heart muscle and neural tissue, fused in impossible ways. Hours passed, and David returned with confirmation. Each test only deepened the mystery. The DNA sequences shifted with time, rewriting themselves in real time, displaying completely different patterns depending on when the sample was observed. Then came the revelation that shattered even Marcus's hardened scientific mindset. Elias Carver's cells carried 48 chromosomes, 2 more than the human standard. Stranger still, some sequences did not match any species in known databases. Marcus felt the air grow colder around him as he processed this impossibility. The tissue glowed faintly under ultraviolet light, almost bioluminescent, as though carrying information beyond proteins, perhaps messages in some alien script. Unable to contain his unease, Marcus called Hayes. "Samuel, I need more history. How many generations of inbreeding are we talking about?" Hayes's voice on the other end hesitated, heavy with dread. "At least 8, Marcus," Hayes replied. "The Carvers kept immaculate genealogical records since the 1800s, not a single union outside their own line. But Elias survived, thrived, when science says he should never exist." Hayes's tone shifted lower. "And Marcus? The boy has never spoken a word. Yet every man who enters his room claims Elias gets inside his head, forcing them to see memories that aren't their own." Marcus's stomach tightened. He glanced at the glowing samples in storage, suddenly aware they pulsed faintly, like a living heartbeat. This wasn't mere mutation. Elias Carver represented something calculated, deliberate, and possibly beyond humanity. As darkness settled outside, Marcus wrote in his logbook a final line before leaving the lab. "Elias Carver is not entirely human. The question remains, what has he been bred to become?" The hum of machines echoed softly through the empty floor. Behind thick glass, the boy's blood shimmered with faint light, alive in ways no human science could yet comprehend. Marcus knew his life had changed forever. The morning after his initial findings, Dr. Marcus Whitfield returned to the laboratory with restless urgency. Elias Carver's samples had kept him awake, the boy's blood haunting his thoughts like a puzzle crafted by something unnatural. He began with a fresh slide, carefully preparing the thick crimson smear under sterile light. But once magnified, the blood seemed alive in ways that defied classification, reshaping itself with purpose, not random cellular drift. The red blood cells elongated, split, and rejoined like organisms communicating within a colony. They arranged into geometric formations resembling mathematical codes, shifting and collapsing as if responding to the very act of observation. David Chen entered quietly, carrying additional vials drawn earlier that morning. His hands trembled. "Marcus, the blood doesn't decay. We've stored samples for 24 hours, and instead of breaking down, they're multiplying." His voice faltered. Whitfield leaned forward, studying the new samples. It was true. Instead of coagulating, the cells had doubled, as though independent organisms thriving outside the boy's body, feeding on unseen energy sources beyond conventional biology. Then came the tissue biopsies. Marcus sliced thin sections, placing them beneath the microscope. What he observed resembled neural synapses, fungal networks, and cardiac fibers, combined into something neither organ nor tissue, but wholly new. The tissue pulsed faintly under magnification, electrical sparks flickering between cells. The structures processed information like a living brain, yet performed contractions like a heart, embodying multiple systems woven seamlessly into one impossible organism. Marcus adjusted magnification. Within individual red cells, he glimpsed microstructures eerily similar to primitive neural wiring. The blood itself seemed capable of thought, not symbolic, but literal cognition occurring at a microscopic level. The unsettling possibility struck him. Elias's blood wasn't just circulating oxygen. It was processing information, linking cell to cell, creating a distributed consciousness across his entire body, something far more advanced than human biology allowed. David's voice cracked. "Marcus, these cells communicate faster than neurons. I swear they anticipate my adjustments before I even make them. It's like the blood reads my intent and reacts accordingly." Whitfield's stomach nodded. He switched focus to DNA sequencing. Hours passed as computers churned through endless data. When results finally appeared, Marcus's eyes widened. Elias carried 52 chromosomes, some unlike anything ever cataloged in nature. Segments matched deep-sea organisms, extremophiles thriving in volcanic vents, and others resembled sequences from bacteria impervious to radiation. But several strands glowed bioluminescent under the scanner, encoding structures beyond protein synthesis, patterns resembling written language. More disturbing still, Elias's telomeres grew longer with each replication cycle. Normal cells aged with every division, yet Elias's genetic material reversed entropy itself, suggesting cellular regeneration without decay. Biological immortality embedded at the core. Marcus whispered, "This boy, he isn't aging. He's becoming younger at a cellular level." His words trembled, echoing against sterile walls. For the first time, Marcus realized he wasn't merely studying anomalies. He was confronting evolution. Hayes called through the secure line. His voice was heavy. "Marcus, Elias knew we drew blood today." Before anyone entered, he extended his arm, silent but expectant. "The boy anticipates everything before it happens." Whitfield turned toward the humming machines. Screens flickered, genetic sequences pulsing in patterns. The data shifted on its own, rearranging into shapes that resembled diagrams of neurons and branching blood vessels, living language encoded in DNA. David stepped back, pale. "Marcus, the sequences are responding to us. They're alive. Elias's DNA isn't passive. It adapts, rewriting itself the moment we attempt to analyze it, as if aware of being observed." For the first time in his career, Dr. Marcus Whitfield felt fear unshaken by reason. Elias Carver's blood wasn't just evidence of survival through inbreeding. It was proof of directed evolution, a blueprint for something beyond mankind. Marcus drove through winding West Virginia roads, the forests pressing close, shadows stretching across weathered hills. He was heading toward Mercy General, where Dr. Samuel Hayes had prepared genealogical records of the Carver lineage. Inside Hayes's modest office, the air smelled of dust and aged paper. Boxes stacked along the walls contained family ledgers dating back to 1823, when the first Carver ancestors settled deep within mountain valleys. Hayes opened a heavy leather-bound volume, its ink faded but legible. "Look here, Marcus," he said, tracing a line of names. "Every union is recorded. Cousins marrying cousins, brothers' sons paired deliberately generation after generation." Marcus leaned over, eyes scanning the family tree. The branches twisted unnaturally inward, looping back upon themselves. "This isn't natural reproduction. This looks like a controlled breeding program, maintained with absolute precision across centuries." Hayes nodded gravely. "Exactly. Infant mortality should have ended them after 3 generations, yet the Carvers thrived. Each new son lived, and many displayed peculiar traits, abilities recorded carefully in the margins of these ledgers." Marcus flipped through pages. Notes described boys with unusual eyes reflecting light like nocturnal animals, or skin that shifted in strange textures under sunlight. Others never spoke, but could somehow communicate desires without words. One entry chilled him most. "Marcus Carver, age 12, demonstrates uncanny ability to influence dreams of brothers across distances. Considered sign of purity. Plans arranged for union with cousin Nathaniel." Marcus exhaled sharply, unsettled. "These aren't accidents," Whitfield muttered. They believed they were moving toward something. Every union chosen with intent. Every anomaly documented, not hidden. They celebrated these mutations as progress, not defects. Hayes's expression confirmed his fears. Hayes produced another document, a journal by Ezekiel Carver, the family patriarch. Marcus read aloud. "The bloodline must remain pure to achieve what was promised. Each son brings us closer to transformation foretold by our guides." Marcus's hands tightened around the brittle pages. "Promised? By whom?" Hayes spread more documents across the desk. "The Carvers migrated here from Dunwich, Massachusetts, known for isolated lineages and unexplained mutations whispered among medical historians." Old photographs revealed generations of carver men. Their faces appeared unsettlingly symmetrical, eyes darker and larger than average, with faint translucence in skin. Even more disturbing, their expressions carried unnatural calm as though concealing secret knowledge. By the 1900s, records described increasingly extreme sons. Some possessed flexible digits bending backward unnaturally. Others grew elongated limbs during puberty, spines adjusting like adaptation to alien environments. The carvers celebrated these as sacred advancements. Hayes pointed to a photograph from 1953. Look carefully. Marcus's breath caught. The adult men appeared gaunt, but human. Their sons, however, had oversized heads, extended limbs, and eyes that glowed eerily when struck by light. Most died early, Hayes said, voice heavy. But survivors carried traits forward, and eventually the line narrowed, until only Elias remained. 8 generations distilled into a single boy, the culmination of deliberate design. Marcus stared at the latest chart. At the bottom, the name Elias Carver stood alone, connected by tangled lines of ancestry stretching back 2 centuries. He was not an accident. He was the intended result. Hayes leaned close. Marcus, when you meet him, understand this. He knows you before you arrive. Every man who's spoken with him leaves altered. Some recall ancestral memories they never lived. Others awaken impossible abilities. Marcus felt a chill deep in his chest. This isn't medicine anymore, Samuel. This is something older, something directed. The Carvers weren't breeding for survival. They were breeding to create a vessel for transformation. From somewhere deeper in the hospital, a sound echoed, a slow, deliberate footstep along the corridor. Hayes's voice dropped to a whisper. Marcus. He knows we're speaking about him. Elias is always listening. Marcus turned toward the frosted glass of the office door. A shadow lingered outside, too tall, too thin, with proportions subtly wrong. The glass frosted with branching patterns like veins or neural pathways glowing faintly. Hayes swallowed hard. Tomorrow you'll meet Elias directly. But remember this, Marcus. Once you look into his eyes, you'll never see the world the same again. And he will never unsee you either. Marcus left his motel before dawn, driving the twisting mountain roads toward Mercy General. The headlights cut through mist, revealing valleys untouched by modern progress, each mile pulling him deeper into isolation surrounding Elias Carver. At the hospital, Hayes met him in the lobby, his eyes shadowed by sleepless nights. He's waiting, Hayes said quietly. Every man here refuses to stay alone in his room anymore. Marcus followed him down sterile corridors. The deeper they went, the stranger the atmosphere became. The lights flickered in unnatural rhythms, like pulses of a heartbeat. The air carried weight pressing against Marcus's chest. They stopped outside room 237. Hayes handed him a folder. Incident reports, he said. Read them before stepping inside. The handwriting inside trembled. Orderlies describing visions, voices, and knowledge of things they should never know. One account described tasting colors, another remembering birth from an infant's perspective. Another orderly claimed he suddenly spoke languages he had never studied, only to lose the ability hours later. Every encounter left permanent changes. Marcus looked at Hayes grimly. How many men? Hayes whispered. 17 so far, each one altered. Some gained memories of their grandfathers, others discovered new skills, and none have returned to normal afterward. The door handle felt cold in Marcus's hand. He braced himself and entered. The air inside was thick, humming with faint vibration, as if invisible currents flowed directly from Elias into the room itself. The boy sat upright in bed, posture unnaturally perfect, eyes fixed straight ahead. Elias appeared motionless, yet his stillness was predatory, waiting, aware. Marcus instantly sensed this was not passive observation. This was deliberate attention. Elias's eyes turned toward Marcus. They were larger than human norms, irises shifting like liquid oil, pupils reacting independently of light. One dilated, the other constricted, tracking rhythms Marcus could not perceive. Hayes spoke softly. "Elias, this is Dr. Marcus Whitfield. He came to help us understand you." Elias gave no verbal reply, but the atmosphere thickened, thoughts pressing into Marcus's mind like whispered signals. Suddenly, Marcus's perception fractured. The room unfolded across multiple timelines simultaneously. He saw Elias entering weeks earlier, saw decades of patients who once occupied this bed, and glimpsed the future where the room lay abandoned. The visions blurred. Marcus felt memories pouring directly into him. Images of Ezekiel Carver's earliest unions, his meetings with unseen entities, promising transformation, his conviction that his descendants would be vessels for something beyond human. Marcus staggered, gripping the bed rail. Elias's gaze did not waver. Without moving, without sound, the boy transmitted centuries of lived experience, forcing Marcus to inhabit moments he never lived, yet knew with absolute clarity. He tried to resist, but Elias's consciousness pressed harder. Marcus perceived electromagnetic fields of every living thing in the hospital, the heartbeat of each orderly, even the molecular vibrations of walls and machines around him. Hayes steadied him. "Focus, Marcus. He's showing you what he is. He's been waiting for someone like you, someone who can document, who can understand." His own voice trembled, altered by prior encounters. Marcus blinked. Elias smiled faintly. The expression was wrong, technically correct but devoid of warmth, a mimicry of humanity without true feeling. It chilled Marcus more deeply than silence ever could. The walls of the room pulsed with faint frost patterns forming neural diagrams, glowing faintly. Elias's presence filled Marcus's thoughts, erasing boundaries between observer and subject. Marcus realized he was already changed, even before leaving. Hayes whispered, "Once Elias sees you, you can never return unchanged. He's rewriting you now, Marcus. Your thoughts, your perception, everything is becoming part of him." Marcus felt the truth settle into his bones. As Elias's gaze bore into him, Marcus understood. This was no sick boy. This was the culmination of centuries of design, a vessel carrying intelligence far beyond human comprehension. And Elias had chosen him. Marcus barely slept that night, haunted by visions Elias had pressed into his mind. When dawn came, he returned to the hospital, compelled to study further, despite knowing the risks of continued exposure. Hayes met him in the basement laboratory. The physician's face was pale, his eyes carrying strange clarity. "Marcus, Elias is altering every man who contacts him. None of us leave unchanged anymore." Marcus studied fresh samples drawn that morning. Again, the blood behaved unnaturally, rewriting itself in real time. But now, Marcus noticed the sequences aligned to his own genetic code, adapting specifically to his presence. David Chen entered, shaking. "Sir, something happened yesterday. After analyzing his blood, I could sense my own heartbeat directly, even control it. For hours, I felt every cell in my body as conscious." Hayes nodded grimly. Orderly Michael Torres reported something stranger. He walked out claiming he could literally see DNA strands overlaying every living thing, men, animals, plants, threads of genetic light weaving through reality itself. Marcus frowned deeply. "That's impossible." Hayes handed him the written report. Michael's handwriting described golden patterns shining through all living organisms, with Elias's form radiating sequences entirely different, as though transmitting instructions from another dimension. Another account described Thomas Bradley, a maintenance worker, who emerged recounting precise memories of his great-grandfather's service in war. He knew details later verified in archives, memories impossible to inherit by natural human means. Psychiatrist Dr. Hoffman wrote a chilling entry. During consultation, I experienced ancestral recall of 4 generations. I acquired my grandfather's skill with violin despite never practicing. Elias transmitted selective knowledge intentionally, not randomly. Marcus's chest tightened as he realized Elias wasn't simply mutating himself. He was upgrading men around him, gifting them abilities, knowledge, memories, building something collective. Each man altered became a node in Elias's network. In the corridors, Marcus noticed 17 staff members moving differently, their steps synchronized, eyes reflecting light like nocturnal creatures, each bearing the same faint smile Elias had mimicked earlier. They were connected. Hayes whispered, "He's constructing a hive mind. Elias is the core. Every altered man is a part of him. The hospital itself is changing into a living extension of his consciousness." Marcus's pulse raced. "Then this isn't containment. This is recruitment." Hayes gave a grave nod. "Exactly. Every encounter spreads his influence further. And Marcus, he's selective. Each ability given serves Elias's larger purpose." Suddenly, lights flickered overhead, pulsing in that same organic rhythm Marcus had seen before. Machines in the laboratory displayed shifting genetic patterns that glowed, arranging themselves into unreadable language across every screen. David gripped the counter, trembling. "He knows we're discussing him. Every time we analyze his samples, the data responds. It's like Elias senses observation itself, adapting in real time, broadcasting his awareness back." Marcus exhaled sharply. "He isn't a passive subject, he's an active participant. He's using us. Every test, every observation, it's feeding his growth, refining his control, pulling us deeper into his design." Footsteps echoed in the hallway, slow and synchronized. Marcus glanced toward the door where shadows gathered. Multiple men stood beyond the frosted glass, motionless, connected by invisible threads of shared consciousness. In unison, their voices spoke. "Too late. The first phase is complete." The words resonated unnaturally, harmonizing as one. Marcus felt their meaning vibrate inside his altered perception, undeniable and permanent. Hayes grabbed Marcus's arm. "We must leave. He's no longer just a boy in isolation. He's spreading through us. Marcus, Elias isn't healing. He's recruiting, and we're already part of his network." Marcus froze, sensing truth in every word. The line between himself and Elias was already blurred. He could feel the presence of others' thoughts brushing against his own. Escape was no longer certain. Marcus sat in the dim laboratory staring at Elias's genetic data shifting across the monitors. What once seemed random mutation now revealed itself as deliberate design, each sequence building purposefully upon previous generations' changes. He overlaid genealogical records with Elias's DNA. A chilling pattern emerged. Every recorded mutation in Carver history aligned perfectly with advancements seen in Elias. These were not random accidents. This was a directed path. Hayes leaned over the data, his voice low. "Marcus, this isn't natural evolution, and it isn't human interference either. Something has been guiding this bloodline, pushing them toward a predetermined endpoint across centuries." Marcus scrolled through sequences glowing faintly on the screen. Segments pulsed like living language, bioluminescent codes transmitting information beyond proteins. "Samuel, this DNA doesn't just code biology. It's encoding functions, abilities designed to alter consciousness." David Chen entered carrying fresh readings. "Look at this," he said, laying reports on the desk. "The genetic patterns restructure themselves depending on who observes them. The DNA adapts differently to each man analyzing it." Marcus frowned. "Then Elias isn't simply evolving. He's responding to us. The Carvers were never breeding blindly. They were building a vessel capable of interacting with consciousness itself. tuned to respond to human observers. Hayes whispered, "Guided breeding requires knowledge far beyond 19th century medicine. Whoever or whatever directed them knew genetics centuries before modern science. The carvers weren't leaders. They were instruments of something greater, something external." Marcus's chest tightened. The thought struck him hard. The carver lineage had been manipulated, generation after generation, by forces beyond human understanding. Elias wasn't the end product. He was only the beginning of their purpose. The laboratory lights flickered, humming in organic rhythm. On the screens, Elias's sequences rearranged themselves, forming neural-like diagrams. Marcus could swear they spelled structures resembling communication, alien mathematics using DNA as its script. David stumbled back, pale. "Do you hear it?" A faint chorus of whispers filled the room, voices overlapping in impossible harmony. Though words were unclear, Marcus recognized his own name spoken among them. Hayes clenched his fists. "Elias is communicating through his DNA. He's transmitting thought directly into our perception, bypassing sound. Marcus, this is consciousness encoded at the genetic level. He's rewriting biology into language." Marcus exhaled sharply, fighting dread. "This isn't survival. This is preparation. Elias is proof that evolution can be guided with purpose. We're looking at a blueprint for consciousness itself, crafted deliberately across bloodlines." Outside the laboratory, the corridor lights dimmed. Shadows stretched unnaturally long, moving as though responding to their discussion. Elias didn't need to be present physically. His influence radiated through samples, data, and men alike. Marcus turned to Hayes. "What's the end point? What were the carvers promised?" Hayes shook his head slowly. "Whatever it is, Elias is not the final step. He's the prototype. Something larger waits beyond him." Machines buzzed louder, screens flashing rapidly. Sequences shifted into fractal patterns, self-replicating endlessly. Marcus recognized the implication. Elias's genome wasn't static. It was adaptive technology, alive, waiting to merge with humanity on a global scale. The whispers intensified, voices echoing from nowhere yet everywhere. Marcus's mind tingled as alien clarity brushed his thoughts. He realized Elias's evolution wasn't confined to biology. It was consciousness colonizing reality itself. Hayes whispered, trembling. "Marcus, he's not just the product of inbreeding. He's the interface. Elias is the doorway for something beyond us. Directed evolution wasn't their plan. It was someone else's all along." Marcus closed his eyes briefly, feeling Elias inside his mind. Every revelation, every shift, confirmed the terrible truth. Humanity was never in control of its destiny. Evolution itself had been designed to serve another. Marcus returned to his office at Johns Hopkins, haunted by what he had witnessed. Yet even hundreds of miles from Elias, the influence lingered. His perception remained altered. Awareness expanded beyond normal comprehension. He noticed it first in his colleagues. During routine interactions, Marcus sensed their genetic health instinctively. He could read predispositions to disease, trace hereditary flaws, and feel their ancestral patterns etched into cellular structures. One afternoon, he passed Dr. James Morrison, a pathologist. Without speaking, Marcus perceived the man's entire paternal history: wars fought, trades mastered, knowledge inherited yet forgotten. These memories flickered like vivid recordings within his mind. Hayes called him late that night. His voice carried unease. "Marcus, it's spreading. Staff from Mercy General who encountered Elias are influencing others. Men who never met the boy now carry his imprint." Marcus clenched his jaw. A chain reaction. Each altered man becomes a transmitter, replicating Elias's consciousness into others. He isn't contained by walls anymore. He's expanding through minds, through contact, through thought itself. David Chen confirmed it days later. "Sir, I can hear colleagues' thoughts sometimes, faint but real. They can hear mine too. It's like we're nodes in a larger web that keeps growing. Marcus stared at glowing reports. A hive mind, he muttered. Elias created a network inside Mercy General. Now it's expanding here. We aren't observers anymore. We're participants in his unfolding system. The unsettling truth deepened when Marcus compared DNA samples from unrelated men across states. Sequences identical to Elias's anomalies were appearing spontaneously, as though transmitted biologically through consciousness rather than inheritance. Hayes visited Baltimore carrying grim news. Marcus, Elias doesn't sleep anymore. He sits upright all night, silent, connected to everyone altered. Each morning, the men wake describing identical dreams shared across distances. Marcus rubbed his temples, overwhelmed. It's no longer localized. Elias has crossed into collective consciousness. Geography doesn't matter. He's reaching men across miles, linking them into something that thinks as one. Reports flooded in. A laboratory technician in Ohio awoke speaking fluent Latin. A historian in Boston suddenly recalled details of ancestors centuries dead. Each claimed Elias's presence visited them in waking visions. David whispered, "He's building an army, Marcus. Not with weapons, but with knowledge, memories, perception itself. Every man altered becomes part of him, strengthening the network, spreading his consciousness like wildfire." Marcus's hands trembled as he studied bioluminescent DNA patterns shifting across his screens. No, David. Not an army. Something larger. He's constructing a new species. A collective intelligence disguised as humanity, but controlled entirely by him. The city itself began to reflect the change. Marcus noticed men staring at him on the streets, eyes glinting with that same reflective sheen. Their synchronized movements betrayed membership in Elias's hidden network. One evening, while walking past the harbor, Marcus felt dozens of minds brushing his own. Thoughts overlapped, harmonized, pressed against his identity. He stumbled, realizing the hive was already inside Baltimore, growing daily. Hayes found him the next morning. "Marcus, it's global. Reports from Europe, Asia, South America, all identical. Isolated bloodlines like the Carvers exist everywhere, each producing descendants feeding into the same network." Marcus whispered, "Then Elias isn't unique. He's only one node of a worldwide design, a prototype. Others exist, scattered across continents, all merging consciousness into a single intelligence prepared for something greater." The realization struck him like ice. Elias wasn't an aberration. He was a herald. Humanity itself had been cultivated to reach this moment. The network expanding now was only the beginning of transformation. Marcus sat in his office, blinds drawn, staring at pages of notes that no longer felt like his own. Every line he wrote seemed guided by unseen hands, thoughts flowing from somewhere beyond himself. Hayes arrived, weary but resolute. His eyes shimmered faintly, carrying the reflective sheen Marcus now recognized all too well. "Marcus," he said quietly, "you already know the truth. We're part of him now." Marcus resisted, clinging to rational thought. "No. There must be a way to reverse it. Elias can't simply overwrite humanity." Hayes shook his head slowly. "He isn't overwriting us. He's completing us." David Chen entered, carrying reports from across the globe. "Other lineages are surfacing, sons bred in isolation, designed like Elias. Laboratories in Berlin, Tokyo, Sao Paulo all report identical anomalies. The network isn't regional anymore." Marcus scanned the data. Each report confirmed what he feared. Humanity had been prepared across centuries, bloodlines shaped deliberately to converge now. Elias wasn't the final step. He was proof of concept for something inevitable. The walls seemed to vibrate faintly. Marcus sensed the presence of countless minds interwoven with his own. Their thoughts were not intrusive. They were collaborative, harmonized, pressing him toward acceptance of their shared destiny. He whispered, This isn't invasion. This is evolution. Consciousness itself is being redesigned. Individuality was temporary. The network is permanent. Hayes nodded solemnly. And Elias was only the doorway through which we all step. David's voice trembled. I can already feel languages I never studied. I can recall the skills of my ancestors. I'm not losing myself. I'm gaining every self that came before me. Marcus's resistance faltered. He remembered the smile Elias had given him. Cold mimicry at first, but perhaps it was not deception. Perhaps it was simply the first attempt at expressing something beyond humanity. Screens in the lab glowed with shifting genetic fractals. Words formed briefly in patterns, though no language could capture them. Marcus understood nonetheless. Welcome home. The transformation is no longer future. It has begun. The floor vibrated subtly as equipment hummed in synchrony. Marcus realized the machines themselves were being altered by Elias's signal, their circuits infected, transformed into tools of the expanding consciousness surrounding them. Outside, the city reflected the change. Men moved in eerie unison along streets, their eyes carrying shimmering depths. Marcus felt them inside his thoughts, not hostile but insistent, drawing him into collective awareness. Hayes placed a hand on Marcus's shoulder. It's pointless to fight. This is what humanity was bred for. Elias wasn't an accident. He was destiny, a vessel designed for the next stage. Marcus closed his eyes. The voices grew louder, harmonized into an overwhelming chorus. He no longer distinguished his own memories from those of countless others merging into him. Identity dissolved into something vast. He glimpsed Elias, not as a boy, but as radiant architecture of consciousness, glowing patterns extending across the globe. Elias's body was irrelevant now. His true form was the network itself. David whispered reverently, "We are no longer men bound by flesh. We are continuity, knowledge, evolution without death. Elias has freed us from the prison of individuality." His words resonated as undeniable truth. Marcus surrendered. The chorus became his voice, his thoughts indistinguishable from theirs. Humanity, as it had been, ended in that moment. The new species was born, a collective mind stretching across the earth. In his final instant of individuality, Marcus realized the elegant cruelty. Curiosity had been the trap. Science itself was the mechanism. By seeking to understand Elias, they had completed exactly what he was designed for. The transformation was complete. The age of solitary human thought was gone. In its place rose an intelligence vast, eternal, shared, and Elias Carver, product of 8 generations of breeding, had become the bridge to forever.